Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Cardiff Giant, America's most profitable 19th century Stone Man hoax. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On October 16, 1869, workers digging a well behind the barn of William C. Stub Newell on his farm near the town of Cardiff in Onondaga County, New York, struck something hard at a depth of approximately 3 feet. Excavation revealed an enormous petrified man, 10 feet 4 inches long, weighing 990 pounds, lying on its back in the soil with an expression of apparent agony on its stone face. Within days, the Cardiff Giant was the most famous attraction in America. Newell erected a tent over the discovery, charged 25 cents for a viewing, later raised to 50 cents, and was almost immediately earning approximately $500 per day, the equivalent of approximately $10,000 per day today. Americans in 1869 were primed to believe in petrified giants. The biblical account of the Nephilim, the giants in the earth described in Genesis 6:4, was widely read literally. Several prominent ministers declared the Cardiff Giant was one of the Nephilim, physical confirmation of a literal Bible. Some scientists endorsed it as well. A Yale paleontologist examined it and declared it genuine. Others were skeptical from the start, including Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr, physician, father of the Supreme Court Justice, and O.C. Marsh, who would later become the first professor of paleontology in the United States. The truth emerged relatively quickly. George Hull, Newell's cousin and the mastermind of the operation, had commissioned the giant's creation in 1868 from Iowa limestone, paid sculptors to carve it in Chicago, hired teamsters to secretly transport it to the Newell farm, and had it buried in advance of the discovery. Hull had conceived the scheme after an argument with a Methodist minister about the biblical giants, and decided that if people would believe in Nephilim, they would believe in anything. He was largely correct. The Cardiff Giant earned approximately $30,000, about $600,000 today, before the fraud was definitively exposed. And then P.T. Barnum attempted to buy the fake giant, was refused, had his own fake made, and declared that his copy was the original and the Cardiff Giant was the fake. America in 1869 contained at least 2 competing fake giants, each claiming to be more genuine than the other. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we go further, if you are finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who loves a good historical mystery. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. If you found us through Facebook, tap follow on our page. It takes just a few seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making these documentaries. Now, let us get back to the investigation. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The 20th and 21st centuries were supposed to be the age of answers. Science had decoded DNA, split the atom, put humans on the moon, and mapped the genome. By the logic of accelerating discovery, every mystery should be converging toward explanation. And yet the ledger of genuinely unexplained phenomena, events witnessed by credible observers, investigated by serious researchers and still lacking a satisfying account, has not shrunk. If anything, it has grown. Part of this is a failure of classification. Phenomena that do not fit established categories tend to be dismissed rather than investigated, filed under anecdotal or mass hysteria, and removed from serious consideration. This is not always wrong. Genuine hoaxes and misperceptions account for a large portion of anomalous reports. But the dismissal is sometimes premature and the cost is real. Cases that might have yielded genuine insight are closed before they are fully examined. Witnesses are discredited. Evidence is lost. The question is never properly asked. The cases that endure, that survive rigorous scrutiny, and still refuse to yield to conventional explanation, are a small but significant set. They share certain characteristics: multiple independent witnesses, physical evidence consistent with witness testimony, and a complete absence of any plausible prosaic explanation that accounts for all the data. These are not ghost stories. They are open problems in empirical science, waiting for someone with the right tools and the intellectual courage to take them seriously. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Cardiff Giant, America's most profitable 19th-century Stone Man hoax, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. George Hull, 1821-1902, was a cigar manufacturer from Binghamton, New York, with a documented skeptical attitude toward religion and a gift for entrepreneurial schemes. His creation of the Cardiff Giant was motivated by a combination of financial opportunism and anti-religious satire. He wanted to demonstrate that religious credulity could be exploited for profit, while making that profit himself. The total cost of creating the giant, commissioning the limestone block, paying sculptors, arranging secret transport to Cardiff, was approximately $2,600, which was recouped many times over in the weeks after the discovery. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the Cardiff Giant was carved from a block of Fort Dodge gypsum, not limestone, as sometimes stated, quarried from Ames, Iowa. Hull commissioned two sculptors in Chicago, Henry Saul and a German immigrant artist, to carve a reclining human figure from the 12-ton block over several months in 1868. The finished figure was chemically treated with sulfuric acid and staining agents to produce an aged, weathered appearance. It was then secretly transported by wagon and rail to Cardiff, New York, where Hull's cousin Newell had it buried secretly on his farm in November 1868, approximately 1 year before the discovery. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The scientific opinions on the Cardiff Giant ranged widely. The most dramatic endorsement came from Dr. John F. Boynton, who examined the giant shortly after discovery and declared it was a pre-Columbian statue of enormous antiquity. not actually a giant person, but a sculptural representation. James Hall, the state geologist of New York and one of the most eminent American scientists of the era, gave a more cautious endorsement, suggesting the giant might be a genuine human petrifaction. Andrew White, president of Cornell University, was skeptical from an early date. The diversity of expert opinion reflects both the limited state of geological and anthropological science in 1869 and the difficulty of examining an object that its owners controlled access to. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, P.T. Barnum's involvement added a layer of absurdist comedy to the story that has made it permanently entertaining. Barnum offered $60,000 to lease the original Cardiff Giant for 3 months, an enormous sum, and was refused. He then had a plaster copy made, which he put on display in New York as the only genuine Cardiff Giant, while declaring the real Cardiff Giant to be a humbug. This produced the remarkable situation of the creator of a fake giant accusing a competing fake of being fake. Barnum's copy actually outdrew the original in New York, validating his claim in commercial terms if not truthful ones. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the definitive exposure of the Cardiff Giant hoax came in mid-November 1869, when a Chicago stonecutter named Henry Martin saw a newspaper illustration of the giant and recognized the tool's marks and texture from the work he had seen being done on a large stone figure in Chicago the previous year. George Hull's contractors in Chicago confirmed the commission and the details of the carving. Hull eventually admitted the hoax in December 1869. Despite the admission, the Cardiff Giant continued to be displayed as an exhibit for years, now as a famous hoax rather than a genuine relic, which proved nearly as commercially viable. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the Cardiff Giant changed hands multiple times after the hoax was exposed. It was purchased by a syndicate including David Hannum in 1869 for $37,500. It was exhibited at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York. In 1901, it was eventually purchased by the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York, where it is currently displayed. The Farmers Museum displays it as an artifact of American popular culture and Gilded Age credulity, an honest acknowledgement that it is a famous fake rather than an attempt to sustain any fiction. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Cardiff Giant, America's most profitable 19th century Stone Man hoax. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the satirical hoax theory consistent with George Hull's own stated motivations, holds that the Cardiff Giant was primarily an anti-religious satire, a deliberate demonstration that literal interpretati of biblical giants could be exploited for profit, and that popular credulity knew no bounds. Under this model, Hull's primary motive was not financial, though he certainly took the money, but satirical. He wanted to demonstrate that the religious culture of his era would believe in anything consistent with biblical literalism. The speed and completeness of the deception's success validated his thesis more thoroughly than he might have expected. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the pure confidence scheme theory holds that the Cardiff Giant was straightforwardly a confidence scheme, a fraud designed to make money by exploiting gullibility. Under this model, the anti-religious satire was a rationalization that Hull added retrospectively to give the scheme a veneer of intellectual purpose. The choice of a biblical giant as the subject simply reflected Hull's assessment of what the American public of 1869 was most ready to believe in, rather than any deep satirical intent. The profitability of the scheme, approximately $30,000 gross in its first few months, supports the commercial rather than satirical interpretation. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the cultural mirror theory, an analytical rather than historical interpretation, proposes that the Cardiff Giant's significance lies not in the mechanics of the fraud, but in what it reveals about 19th century American culture. The enthusiasm for the giant, from ministers who saw biblical confirmation to scientists who cautiously endorsed it to ordinary people who paid to see it, reflects the specific intellectual culture of post-Civil War America, a country grappling with Darwinism, biblical literalism, the new science of geology, and a popular hunger for sensational spectacle. The Cardiff Giant was the exact right fake at the exact right cultural moment. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree, that is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Cardiff Giant, America's most profitable 19th century Stone Man Hoax, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes George Hull's own testimony about the hoax, given after its exposure, provides the primary evidence for how the fraud was constructed and its motivations. Hull described the commission of the carving in Chicago, the chemical aging treatment, the transport to Cardiff, and the arrangements with his cousin Newell in sufficient detail to be corroborated by other witnesses, particularly the Chicago stonecutters. His account of his motivations, arguing that biblical literalists would believe in anything, is consistent with his documented skeptical views and with the satirical interpretation of the scheme. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented. Physical evidence of the forgery includes the tool marks identified by the Chicago stonecutter Henry Martin, who recognized the handiwork, the chemical residues from the sulfuric acid aging treatment, identified in subsequent scientific analysis, and the geological composition of the giant, gypsum from Fort Dodge, Iowa, rather than any local stone that would be consistent with its claimed ancient origin. Modern X-ray and chemical analysis of the giant, conducted periodically by researchers, confirms its relatively recent manufacture from identifiable source material. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the documentary record of the Cardiff Giant's commercial operations, the newspaper accounts, the gate receipts, the syndicate's purchase records, provides evidence of the enormous commercial success of the fraud and of the credulous public response. The fact that substantial portions of the American scientific community were not immediately skeptical, and that several eminent figures gave qualified endorsements, documents the degree to which the fraud succeeded across educational and social levels, not just among uneducated or religiously credulous observers. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Cardiff Giant, America's most profitable 19th-century Stone Man hoax. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Cardiff Giant is displayed at the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York, where it has been since 1947. The museum presents it straightforwardly as one of America's most famous hoaxes, and as an artifact of 19th-century popular culture. A replica of the Cardiff Giant is also displayed at the Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum in Farmington Hills, Michigan. The story is regularly used in American history and media literacy education as a case study in popular credulity, the psychology of the confidence scheme, and the cultural significance of what people choose to believe. The Cardiff Giant's relevance has not diminished with time. In an era of widespread misinformation and online disinformation, the story of a 10-foot stone man that fooled a nation for months, despite being made of gypsum and acid, is a useful historical reminder that the desire to believe can override evidence even in the presence of expert examination. The story of P.T. Barnum's counterfake is particularly relevant. The idea that a fake of a fake can be marketed as the genuine article successfully is a dynamic that resonates with contemporary information environments where layers of deception are increasingly difficult to untangle. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Cardiff Giant, America's most profitable 19th century Stone Man hoax, from the historical record through the physical evidence across the competing theories and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Cardiff Giant ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please help us reach more people. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. If you are watching on Facebook, tap the follow button on our page to stay connected. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.